something they already had, or like, you know, they'll like try to get something for you. I don't know, like.
Yeah, the website doesn't tell you. Like the FAQ doesn't have anything about it. It's just like a form, and like one of the questions in the form is like, you know, what movie do you want to see? So I'm like, do I just write it down and they'll let me know like, sorry, we can't get clearance for it. Like, you know, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like if I wrote George Miller, like, hey, Mr. Miller, I want to do this, and I feel like he'd be cool with it, but the studio could be like, no, F you. You know. So I feel like George Miller would be like, absolutely, go watch my movie with your friends in the theater. That's what I made it for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I'll be like, Miller, please secure the funding for The Wasteland because I want this movie to exist.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, I kind of wish. So before Furiosa was made, it originally was intending what became Furiosa to be kind of like an animated anthology in the style of the Animatrix. And I really wish that existed. That sounds amazing. In like Mad Max dystopic Australia, like an Animatrix style deal. That, oh my god, that would have been incredible.
Well, I was watching a YouTube video that because you know the production for just to even get Fury Road off the ground, you know, was like 9/11 and the War on Terror was like one of the big reasons it didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
then Mel Gibson became an anti-Semite, and
well, I heard that that's when he molded, like he kept having like these issues, and then like he just molded like having an animated series. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah,
I heard that was because he had gotten to a point where they had all the storyboards and stuff for like Fury Road ready to go. And they planned to shoot Furiosa back to back too, but they're like this would be way too long because the Fury Road production is very well known that it was like hell for the actors, and like Tom Hardy hated every second of it. But yeah, enough of that. We'll talk about that. That's my plan, just so you guys know. So probably like the first week of December. So just so you guys know.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to go. That sounds crazy. What theater?
Yeah.
What theater?
Dan, is he still here for you?
What? Yeah.
Oh God, what is going on?
Can you guys hear me still, or no?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Oh, hi. Are you guys here?
Yeah,
we're still here.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost you guys for a moment. Yeah, okay, I'm here. It'd be just NCG here in Kingston.
Okay. Wait, don't dox.
Whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, well, whatever.
No, you don't watch it anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
We have like 3 viewers, maybe. Like,
yeah, but one day going down the line. Anyway, who cares? All right, my social is. All right, everyone, welcome. Take 2 to Eyes Wide Watch Club. What are we doing? So Remington last month recommended Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, with, you know, the new Superman coming out. So Remington, why don't you take it away and introduce the movie, sir?
Yeah, so this is a movie that had been on my mind for a couple years now. I had long had the Christopher Reeve era of Superman on the list, and I had long been wanting to get back into it. 2 years ago, there was a very acclaimed documentary that came out about Christopher Reeve and how he became Superman and his personal struggles with trying to regain the ability to walk after he was in a tragic accident. And how he never actually succeeded despite pouring like millions of his own dollars into the effort for science to cure the effort. And it just intensified my interest in it. And with the coming James Gunn film, I was like, I should go and see the director's cut. Because I'd seen the first and second Superman, the theatrical version of Superman 2. And I was like, oh, this exists. I should get around to that. And also, I was personally very, when I first had learned about it, I was personally very taken with the idea that, like, you know, because obviously we live in a time where the Snyder Cut, you know, looms wide in online film discourse and how all of that transpired. The fact that something very similar happened, first, obviously, of course, when Donner was booted from the movie in the early 80s to eventually getting to recut the film into something closer to what he wanted in 2006, like a very similar episode. So that's where I was kind of going with this. And I know, of course, Gene over here, he's like a big comic book guy. So I figured that would be a good discussion for all of us. And I'm just happy that we all got to watch it. Now, I know Gene did. Dan, did you see Superman 1 and also the Lester cut in preparation?
Yes. For the first time, all of them.
Cool. So yeah, no, I'm glad to be able to talk about this with you guys. And yeah, I definitely have lots of things to go over as we compare to the Lester cut and the Donner cut, which stacks up.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. Do you want to say what you thought about it first, or do you want to hear us first?
Wait. I want to add something real quick.
Sure.
Dan, so you watched the first one and then the theatrical cut and then Donner cut. Did you read or watch any videos about like why two cuts exist, or you just kind of have the movies as reference?
I'm generally aware of everything that happened, yeah.
That doesn't answer the question, I guess, but sure.
wait, did I know?
Like did you read? Well, I did a bunch of reading because I was curious. Like, wait, why was Donner fired? So I did a bunch of reading about it. Then I watched a very good YouTube video that also like went in depth on like, here's what happened in the production. Here, like Gene Hackman notably did not return for the Lester shoots because he just refused to. I did a lot of reading of like, okay, like here's how these two movies, like here's how the Lester cut like even made it to the theaters. I don't know if you read about any of that.
Yes. Yeah. No. I'm aware. Okay. I don't know if I know every detail, but I know most of all of that. Yeah.
I mean, you don't know the details of Christopher Reeve's salary. No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Right. Sorry. So you were saying, Deb?
No, I didn't know. Remington, do you want to give your thoughts on like what you thought about it first, or do you want us to go?
But, I'll top in it. So yeah, generally speaking, if we're just talking about the Donner cut is like, I think it's something that I personally appreciate more than I think fully liked, because it's very rough, so it's a very interesting, like, intellectual experience to compare, like, okay, what was Donner thinking versus where Lester actually took it once he took the reins back in the 80s, and what close approximation could Donner get to with help from editor. I think his last name is Thau. It's like Michael Thau. Do you remember his name, Gene? The guy who edited it?
I don't remember, but yeah.
It's something like that. But yeah, those two working together basically made the Donner cut. So it's intellectually very interesting, but since it's kind of like reapproaching a thing that you already saw, it's kind of a lot like, though this is where I think these two differ. Dan, you might not know, because I don't know how big into anime you are, but Gene, you would definitely know, with like Full Metal Alchemist versus Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So like, obviously Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, because it's able to take an original ending, so it kind of succeeds on its own rights. The beginning part of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is like a little rough, because it's kind of like, oh yes, we know what happens, so we're kind of just skipping through it a little bit to get to the good parts, basically. And that's kind of, unfortunately, a lot of what the Donner cut feels like at times, because it's kind of like condensing certain things so that way you can get to where Richard Donner's original take is and his choice in certain takes and cuts and his recreations. And so the build up to certain scenes doesn't feel as like emotionally resonant. But what's cool about it is just like the contrast. So like, obviously, Richard Donner, he was going through something that was darker, more mythic, and you really get that, like that scene where so like, firstly, like I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I felt like when Zod and his cronies are trapped in the Phantom Zone, like that's like way more terrifying in the Donner cut, because they're like screaming in agony and you stay with them for far much longer. And also that scene where Superman goes and restores his powers, and he does so by like merging with like the AI ghost of Jor-El. That's like, that's like way scarier in the Donner cut too. Like it's like creepy how Clark is like, no, you don't have to do this, and like he just like takes over him. Like it's kind of crazy. So like those are like really effective, but the build up to certain moments I think is like lacking a little bit, and certain scenes look a little rough. So like it's very interesting from like an artistic perspective and an intellectual exercise. It's not, however, like a strong movie in its own right, in my opinion. So I definitely recommend for people who are doing what we did, start with the theatrical and then do the director's cut. Basically, we can get into a bigger conversation on that, but that's my take. I don't know how you boys feel.
Which version did you guys watch? Because there's like 2, 3. There's like the TV version, which has a very notable like scene that's like quite violent. I don't know, Remington, if you know what I'm talking about.
No,
and I guess there's like the version I watched had I watched on the Internet Archive. Someone uploaded basically like what they're trying. So there's the DVD version. And then there's a version that was like available on Amazon Digital that has like slightly extended sequences, not even by much. They're very slightly extended sequences. And then the TV, I guess they aired it on TV at one point, and it had a scene where is it Nun, like the brutish like lackey to Todd? When he rips off the siren from the cop car in the Donner cut, like when the little boy gets on a horse and runs off to like warn his family or something like that. There's a scene where Nan like chucks the freaking siren and it like kills him.
Oh my god! No, I didn't have that.
So I watched a YouTube video that talks about how that scene aired on the TV airing, and actually notably it wasn't on like the DVD or digital cut. So the version I watched of the movie was like the guy who uploaded it in his description said his purpose is trying to have like the most complete version of the Donner cut, because the digital version I guess is now lost media in a way where it's like you just can't find it anymore through Amazon, to my understanding. So it included that scene.
I rented it on Amazon, so that was not on there. Version.
Okay, yeah. So that scene only existed like I guess like that scene is like notably in the TV version, according to the YouTube video I watched on it. Yeah, dude, it's really interesting. It's like it's kind of interesting how like it's like not only is there a Donner cut, but there's like two or three different versions of the Donner cut as well.
Well, that's like, and we can get into this as we talk about like maybe have a broader discussion on like director's cuts and different cuts in general, because like you'll make a version and then like a producer or whoever put together the DVD or whoever's putting it on TV will decide, well, this isn't suitable for TV standards, so we need to cut this, or this, we want to put this in the DVD, but because we think it'll sell well, even if it's not necessarily what the director wanted. So like there's periodic decisions being made, which is why it's always rough describing things as someone's director's cut or the extended version. And sometimes they'll even slap director's cuts on the title director's cut on a thing that is not actually the director's. Like famously, like there's a director's cut quotation marks of Alien that Ridley is disavowed. He's like, I was not involved in that at all. My preferred version is theatrical. Do not watch that. But they called it a director's cut because they just included a bunch of deleted scenes and then thought it would sell well to call it a director's cut.
Yeah, Ridley doesn't like the whole sequence with when Ripley finds all the crew like cocooned, and you find Dallas like cocooned, and he doesn't like that. He chopped it for a reason. Notably Blade Runner has a few different cuts as well, to the point where same thing, Ridley Scott, there's a version that he's like, no, this is the version that I intended, and he feels that I think like the studio tried to have a more concise ending, and Ridley prefers the ambiguity of whether Harrison Ford is a replicant or not. Whatever, we can talk about Blade Runner the other day. I would talk Blade Runner any day of the week. But yeah, for sure, it's not like a first time thing. You see it often with studio meddling, basically.
But then you have people like Francis Ford Coppola, who keeps revisiting Apocalypse Now like every 20 years to go and be like, no, I have to get it right this time. So. Yeah, I feel like most people were happy with Apocalypse Now Redux, and then like a couple years ago he put out Apocalypse Now. I think he called it the Final Cut or whatever. Which is like less footage. And so yeah, different things.
Yeah, the George Lucas effect, basically.
The George Lucas effect.
Okay, yeah. So wait, Dan, what version did you like? How did you watch this?
Yeah, I did the Amazon Prime thing, so yeah, it wasn't the TV cut. No.
Yeah, I was just trying to find like a source to not pay for it, and I just found like an Internet Archive thing, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and yeah, it's on there. Like I said, the intent is to have the most complete version. It was missing some scenes. So like a YouTube video I watched on it talked about like I guess like some TV airing had a scene where like you see Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor like exit the Fortress of Solitude at the end, and like that wasn't in the cut that I watched. It's so there's a few different scenes out there that exist that have been shown in one way or another, but that don't seem to be generally included in like DVD or rental cuts of the movie.
Huh.
Very interesting. Yeah, Dan, you want to go next on how you felt about it? Want me to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I could go next. Yeah, so I never saw any of these movies before, so I'm happy I finally got around to them, because it's funny thinking about it. I feel like familiar with the Burton and Joel Schumacher Batman movies, and I just have never even dipped my toes into these early Superman movies. Even though I was kind of generally aware of Christopher Reeve, obviously, I knew, like, I didn't even know until recently, like a year or two ago, with all this talk around the new Superman, realizing that, oh, wait a minute, Gene Hackman was originally Lex Luthor. I did know Brando was involved in some way. So yeah, I was pretty fresh. Like, I was connecting the dots as I was learning about it, going through and watching them. And being like, oh yeah, I think I remember hearing about this and that, and I generally kind of remember hearing about the Donner cut. But yeah, none of it was on my radar for the longest time. So yeah, first time watching all of them. It honestly, and maybe because I just don't care as much about superhero movies, I feel like this is one of those cases of something where it's so much more interesting to talk about the behind the scenes production. And that's probably partially why that's kind of what you guys were saying too, than to actually watch. And I feel like my experience watching the Donner cut itself in a vacuum would be so much more, I would feel so much more some type of way about it if I didn't think, if I thought the original Superman was perfect. Because I saw the first, so I started watching Superman 1, and long story short, I thought the first like 40 minutes of it were almost like Spielberg masterfulness. Like, I was like a child in a candy store, absolutely was falling in love with it. And then everything with Lex Luthor kicked in, and I really started to check out. And that was the first movie. So then when by the time we get to the second movie, the Lester cut, man, was I checked out for so long of that movie. And then I was like, okay, and there's stuff to appreciate, sure. And I still love Christopher Reeve. And then I'm like, okay, let's get to the Donner cut. And then, yeah, it's a little better. It's fine. It went from like, this is crappy to, oh, this is fine. So, yeah, I don't know. It was the second one, especially the Lester cut, was genuinely a slog to get through. And I feel like by the time I got to the Donner cut, sure. And again, I feel like maybe this was something too. I think, because how you guys were kind of talking, I'm not as experienced with like alternate cuts of movies. Like, I saw the Apocalypse Now, Redux. I watched 2 different cuts of like Blade Runner, but I'm not one of those guys that I've had a lot of experience of, knowing all the differences between this version of Blade Runner and this version of Blade Runner. I mean, because a lot of the time they're all pretty minor, right? In a lot of cases, but it is interesting to explore them and just see the process of like, or like an assembly cut of just, here's all of the stuff that we have put into one. So yeah, no, I think the story behind it is so much more interesting to talk about. But yeah, with the actual movies themselves, I just think it's so funny how history kind of repeats itself, because I feel like it's something similar with the Snyder cut. I almost think the Snyder cut of whatever it was, Justice League, is better and as a movie and experience than this Richard Donner cut.
Sure.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But you guys we can get into it. But yeah, for me, I don't know. I just feel like it's more about a conversation about the backstory behind it. Yeah, because I just feel like I don't know. I just went from a movie that I really thought was bad to, oh, they did a few things differently. And I don't know. And again, maybe it's because I'm not a Superman guy or like a superhero guy in general, but oh, okay, yeah, they don't have the cellophane S, like whatever. Like I guess in my mind, I was hyping myself up to like, oh, this is going to be like a totally different movie, which was just stupid on my part to think that. It's like, no, they kind of reworked the cringier parts into less cringier parts, and that's it. So.
It's like almost 25 years later. So you can't just go back and reshoot things.
Sure, right. Yeah, it was 2006.
There was stuff that Donner had shot that then Lester just reshot, so it doesn't exist anymore. Back in the day. So you have very like finite things that you could have worked with when he was like making it in 2006, 2005, 2006. So it's a different experience than Zack Snyder sitting down with Christopher Nolan like a couple years later and just like doing it again. You know what I mean? So you're not going to have a lot, and also like technology has just advanced far more in that period.
Yeah. Well, for Snyder too, he had shot like basically the whole movie, right? That whole third act is completely different in the Snyder cut, and I think he just had it all, and he just had it like in his vault or whatever, right?
Yeah.
He just needed to get some post production on it.
So it's different. There's a reason why one can maybe feel more complete, and more defined than the other. But isn't it interesting, like how these episodes like rhyme with each other? How you had a director who wanted to do like a darker, more mythic follow-up to a previously successful Superman film, and then he got axed by the studio and replaced by someone who was kind of like a studio guy and wanted to do like lighter comedic fare. And people actually like the theatrical Superman movie back in the day, if you go back and look at the reviews. So it's not quite the same thing, because like the Whedon cut of Justice League, people didn't really like the Whedon cut in 2017. But still, some time later,
Please call it by its government name, Justice League.
Justice League, yes.
Please call it by its government name.
Yeah, but again, analogously, some years later, obviously it's a different time frame from like the Whedon cut to the Snyder cut versus the Lester cut to the Donner cut. But the Donner cut only happened because there were interested fans who literally did like a letter writing campaign to try to attract studio interest to make it happen. This is there was social media, but it was pre-Twitter. It was like social media being the thing that we know it is today. Like Facebook was basically in its infancy at this time, so it was really like an actual letter. People wrote letters saying, we release the Donner cut, like we want to see it, because for years basically like Margot Kidder had been like, and other people who were involved in the film been like, yeah, there's a whole different movie in the can that you just aren't able to see. And people wanted it. So it's interesting the way like history repeats itself, and that was one of the things that attracted this. But I'm hogging all the attention. Gene, did you want to give your fuller review?
I was gonna say George Lucas once said it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yes. Well, he was correct.
And you were saying like I think I read that a big part of it is because since Marlon Brando had passed away. Something about with the rights, because notably in the Lester cut, they completely cut out all of Jor-El's scenes because they didn't want to pay Brando apparently.
Yes, and to make the Donner cut happen, they had to like negotiate something with the Brando estate to get permission to use those scenes, basically.
Yeah, and I'll talk about how, so much like Dan, I found myself just kind of feeling like a slog through the Superman 2 Lester cut. I felt like thinking about it afterwards, I'm like, it's a big, like the whole first half of the movie just felt like just following, kind of trying to build up a Lois Lane and Clark Kent relationship, and I'm like, oh, this is like an Attack of the Clones ass movie where it's just like I don't care about this. It's like a slog. And then so I thought it was all right, but I found myself enjoying the Donner cut a lot more. I felt like the pacing was better. I really prefer the intro with I like notably the scene where Lois Lane tries to prove that he's Superman, and she lets herself fall out the window. Like I really like that right at the beginning, instead of having it shifted towards the middle of the movie Niagara Falls. Like I really enjoyed the Donner Cut's pacing a lot.
Niagara
more.
Falls scene was so goofy in the theatrical.
It was so
like,
dumb.
Oh my god.
So yeah, like I said, much like Dan, I found myself just kind of having like struggling with the Lester cut, but then Donner cut, I was pleasantly surprised at the start. Like I felt the the Lester cut spends like 8 minutes just like showing you like recapping Superman 1, and like the Donner cut doesn't do that, you know. So I think that helped me a lot. But then I got to a point where, probably like Dan, I expected a much different movie, and then like, oh, okay, no, like there's, it's not too, like the middle bits aren't too different. Like the scene with, once Zod's crew is on Earth, like that more or less plays out the same. Lex Luthor's escape from prison is more or less the same, and I hit a point where I'm like, okay, like you get the middle's the same movie, so it's kind of
it's tonally different.
That's tonally different.
That's the key difference. It's tonally different.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree. The when Lex Luthor's first scene with his like lackey, if you play those two side by side, they're tonally different, and it's really nice study in how you can make a whole scene feel so different just on the score used, on the way they're saying their lines. Like it's very interesting seeing all that. But yeah, so overall, I kind of preferred the Donner cut, honestly.
I think we're in agreement on that. Sorry,
like all the and like all the other stuff aside too that you talked about, like there's like the scene where Lois tries to prove that where she like shoots him with the blank, like that was all like text screen footage, and you can tell because like
that's why they're like not. It's just coverage. It's like they're not like actually talking to each other in frame. It's just like cutting between them like that.
But also, like you can tell, like Reeves looks younger, and he's not as bulky. He's noticeably younger. Clark's glasses are like thick, like Buddy Holly frame glasses, which is not what he had in the Niagara Falls scene. It's so those things aside, sure. There's a lot of times you can tell it's like a Gene Hackman body double because he refused to come back. But yeah, I prefer the Donner cut in a lot of ways. But I can talk about why, and I mean, I don't know how to mention. Like, I found the Lester cut too campy for my liking. It just, I that was like a huge issue I had with it. Just, it's so freaking goofy. It wasn't for me in that regard.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way that you guys do about the Lester cut. When I saw that, I kind of felt like it was a step down from the previous film, and I liked the previous film. I didn't love it like some people do. But yeah, I didn't find a lot of it very funny, but because it kept spending all its time trying to be funny, it kind of like undercut the parts of it that I felt weren't supposed to be funny. You know, like you're asking me to take this great villain, supposed to be one of our great movie villains of all time, which is Terrence Stamp's General Zod, seriously, and it's full of a movie. It's entirely in a movie that's full of like dumb gags. It's not. It's hard for me to take it seriously, especially since what Stamp's performance is him standing very still and being like, kneel before Zod. That's just it. Like, how am I supposed to like get invested in this? And so I also struggled through the Lester cut, and I prefer the Donner cut, even though I think that the Lester cut, because it has the advantage of having been like made in the moment, the build up to certain things is better. The execution on certain things is better because it was actually like made in production. It was not something that had to be revisited like 20 plus years later, and you had to like work creatively to assemble something that was in the works, almost 30 years ago. Yeah, that's my take.
So I was very confused watching the ending of the Donner cut and seeing him turn back time, because I'm like, wait, that's what he did in the first one, and then I read about why that is, Did any of you guys know that going into the movie, or did you guys learn about that afterwards as well?
I prefer the turning back time. I guess I didn't think about it too heavily. I just preferred it because I thought the hypnotic kiss thing in the Lester cut was so fucking weird when he did it. And
but you know, like, why they did it? Like that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Well, they were supposed to. It was originally supposed to be the ending to the second movie, but they ended up using it in the first movie, right? Yeah.
I don't know if you read about that, Remy.
No,
I think a lot of I think a lot of the conversation is going to be revolving around all three movies because they were shot back to back, and it's like so which I didn't know, but go ahead, Gene.
Yeah. So Remington, so basically, since you don't know, Donner wanted to end the first movie on a cliffhanger, and the idea was we would see the Zod trio freed from the Phantom Zone, and that would go into the sequel, right? But the producers told him, "Don't do that. You need to end the movie on like you need to end the movie on a not cliffhanger." So they didn't have one, so they took the ending of him turning back time and just tacked it onto the ending of the first movie, right?
Yeah.
So since they used that, by the time they got around to the Lester cut, they're like, well, we're not going to use Donner's original ending because we already used it in Superman 1. So then they did the hypnotic kiss thing instead. So then, fast forward, 20-something years later, Richard Donner's like, no, fuck it. That was the ending I wanted for this movie. I'm going to use it again.
I think he hated the kiss.
So much better, though. Like it is hokey that you can just fly really fast and turn back time, but that's like a comic book thing. I think that's a thing we have to remember about why certain things are hokey is that this is not... We, in 2025, are very baked in a time of like trying to elevate the superhero genre, starting with like Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, and then continuing on with the Snyderverse. Whereas like when they were making these Superman movies, they are trying to capture what people liked about the Silver Age of superhero comics. The Silver Age of comic books, where things are very campy and very silly, and it's the era of that. Not to worry, I have this device on my utility belt that suddenly takes care of the specific problem. That level of like jokiness. That's why this Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor is very different compared to like what Clancy Brown was doing in the DC animated universe, and versus even
when we get back to
Kevin Spacey in the Bryan Singer film. I guess you could say there's some kind of connective tissue with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but even that is very like Luthor isn't like he's not a clown in the Snyderverse. He's just like, I don't know, neurodivergent or something. So it's a darker take on Luthor that's been the defining feature of the 21st century versus in the last century where he's more cartoonish, I guess you could say.
Well, it's the difference between like 1960s Cesar Romero Joker and then like 1980s like murderous comic book Joker. Notably, the Killing Joke is what established him as like, no, this man's a psychopath and he will murder you.
Absolutely.
Versus like, someone like, I don't know if your parents grew up watching the 60s Batman.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes, they did.
But they would know like, no, he's like a wacky clown.
Those episodes are hard to find. You have to like track them down. But that old school Batman show is so good. With like the boom, pow.
Are they not available on like online? Are they lost media?
You have to like find them on VOD somewhere.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, talk. It's so funny, because you guys are. I feel like I'm a bit of an outsider coming into this because. I don't know. I'm gonna sound like the downer on this episode, but the whole after I saw the Donner cut, I'm happy that he got to release, I guess, as close to what he wanted to make as he could. But the credits rolled on that movie, man, and I just thought this whole thing just feels like a complete fucking waste of time. I don't know. I just, you know what it is, and my experience was, because again, I never saw any of these movies before, and I think I would feel differently if I thought the first Superman movie, the first Donner movie, was like a masterpiece, right? I feel like I would feel more invested. But
if you were like an adult in 2006, you probably would have felt differently because this is you because if you're seeing this in theaters, that means you get to see Marlon Brando on the big screen in a role you've never seen before for the first time in years. He had died, you know, that right. You would have thought you'd never get to see him again on screen. So it would have been like a very special moment if you were like a sentient human in 2006, you know.
I think Christopher Reeve too had died by that point, right?
Yeah, Christopher Reeve died in 2004, so it also had a special significance for that. And that was another reason why it was special for them to go and make the movie, because A, Christopher Reeve had died, B, he never got to walk again, and C, you're revisiting his legacy, which is being the man who brought Superman to life on the big screen.
That's all a good point. I guess, if you were there in 2006, I'm sure that's a good point.
Bro, you had to be there.
But
you'd be there, man.
I guess so. No, it's funny. When I was watching when I sat down and watched the first movie, I completely fell in love with the first 45 minutes of the movie. I felt like, John Williams is like 60% of what makes that Donner movie work, the first one. And it's like 40% Reeves and the actress who plays Lois. I was falling in love with the movie. Everything with like the setup and his backstory and just the bright color of like the Kansas sky and the wheat field. It was all there, all the Superman trademarks, and just building up the sequence of young Clark Kent running against the train, and building up that relationship, because there is a lot of build up in that first movie, like the first hour, and I was in love with all of that stuff. And the whole appeal, or I feel like the whole pitch of that first Donner movie, was that the tagline of "You will believe a man can fly," right? And that was I felt like, and then you get that amazing scene where Superman goes to Lois's rooftop, and they have like that very sexual conversation back and forth, and then that was so funny, I was laughing through it. And then he takes her on a flight. It was kind of like Peter Pan inspired or whatever. And John Williams' score, I felt like I was watching E.T. for the first time. I was riveted. I thought, this is like Spielberg level classic early blockbuster magic. I completely was like, I think this is a perfect movie so far. And then they introduce Lex Luthor, and they actually have to get into like the superhero-ness of it all. And that's when the movie borderline fell off a cliff for me after that. And I don't know, and a lot of it is just because, most of it is just because I almost feel like that movie was doing such a good job. And I think, Gene, you said something about the love story. I think the love story was what I loved the most about these movies. I think the love story between Clark, like the love triangle between Clark and Superman and Lois, was the most appealing part to me. So as soon as it kicked into the superhero-ness of it, now we need a bad guy, now we need I started to check out. And then from there, you get the second movie in both versions. Admittedly, the Donner cut makes it a little more bearable. But those second movies are so much more like, okay, now here's more of the superhero shit. And I just didn't care either time around. So yeah, it was like I got 45 minutes of greatness, and then I just didn't care about anything else. And it is funny how you guys were talking about Lex Luthor. And I love Gene Hackman. I love everything I've seen him in. And he was doing great in this. But yeah, it just... And again, this is not a big part of it. But part of it was, I feel like this isn't the kind of Lex Luthor I've been pitched all my life. Like, like how you guys were saying, I feel like Lex Luthor's supposed to be like a billionaire enterprise genius, and here he feels like the Riddler, and he was in like a like a penguin bat cave, and I don't mind it. Just, again, that was a small part, but yeah, it just was like, oh, this, I don't really.
It's a different era.
It's a different era, which is fine, but I just didn't care about the super villain nature of it. That part was just not helping. That it didn't feel like quote unquote my Lex Luthor, like whatever. But that's a small part. And then in the second movie, in both cuts, I just, why is Lex Luthor even here? It's so stupid. All of it. I don't know. All of it. Aside from that first hour,
he wants Australia, Dan.
Of movie.
Yeah, why? Why does he want Australia?
But that I just wanted to get out there. That was my whole experience with it. Was like, this whole thing. I just don't care. Why don't we get like, I kept getting angry because I thought that first hour of the movie before he gets into the superhero stuff was so good. Like, the excitement was him flying, him coming into his own with powers, and just the conflict was him saving a kid, him saving Lois, like saving from natural disasters. Like, I want a superhero movie where we don't need a villain. Like, just have the I don't know, but yeah, it just made me think I hate superhero movies. But
I mean, you probably do.
You probably do, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, but that's kind of like my overall narrative with this whole thing.
It's funny because from my understanding, people, like Remington said, the movie was well reviewed when it, back when it came out. And from what I saw too, like, people liked that there was more action, there was more Superman to it. He faced off against a superpowered villain. Like, people enjoyed that. But, again, like, that was probably
they like the comedy too, because again, if your conception of like what is great about superheroes is the Silver Age of comics, you like that goofy shit. So again, not even just Lex Luthor, if we're just talking about the Man of Steel himself, we're more accustomed to someone like, Henry Cavill, who's a little more brooding, even Brandon Routh, who has a little bit of Reeve charm to him, but is, again, that's a different type of movie where Superman has a lot of guilt on his shoulders, a lot of like stuff, that moral burdens that he's bearing. So also a darker performance. And then you have the DC animated universe. Tim Daly, I think it is, who voices Superman in that. That is a more like serious-minded Superman. It's not a dark performance or a brooding performance, but it's very like, I mean business. And so we're used to that. Whereas what Christopher Reeve is channeling and what gets really to shine in the Lester cut is the fact that he's playing Silver Age Superman, and Silver Age Superman is very quippy, right? He has a lot of fun. And that's why a lot of Christopher Reeve's performance is kind of just like, I'm here to save you, it's fun. It's a little camp. And it's just a different era than what we're accustomed to, 25 years into the 21st century.
Yeah, I was very entertained by like the aw shucks, like I like that stuff. And but where I'm coming from is I just loved so much more of the focus on the relationship between Lois, Clark, and Superman. Like, there was literally a scene that was so charming when every time they're walking around the Daily Planet and Clark's following Lois around, and he's just like, he literally, I think he says, "Oh, golly, Lois." I think he says "golly" at one point, and I just thought it was so charming, like that 1950s. God, did I want to fuck Reeves the entire movie? Oh my God, did I want to fuck Christopher Reeve in these movies?
Said everyone.
Yeah. Same thing as Henry Cavill, I guess, but no, it's normal for straight men to want to fuck the guy who plays Superman. But no, I just was so, it's almost like I was watching, and that's what was getting me angry. I almost felt like I was watching the transition from, God, this is going to sound so fucking pretentious, of like, here's what movies kind of used to be and focus on, but then it's like, I see it as like, oh wait, we're a superhero movie, this is what it has to be, and this is what they become for the next 20 years or so. Well, and I'm just seeing like I just thought, fuck, man, that first hour of the first Superman movie was so was just so dense with entertaining and interesting between the love triangle between those three, and it kind of lingers on into the second movie less so, but it just made me hate all of the action and supervillain shit even more. But yeah.
Well, see, that's part of the reason that I picked this movie, because we're on the cusp of a new era of Superman, right? The James Gunn movie is coming down the pike. And so I wanted to, maybe this is a good place since you opened that up, Dan, with your comment, to talk about how we feel, what our connection is to, what our thoughts on are with the superhero genre. Because, it's that first Superman movie, the Donner Superman movie, that kind of invents the Superman movie, not the superhero movie as we know it. Prior to that, there were no major theatrical releases of a Superman movie. Your conception of a superhero movie was like serials, like afternoon serials that you would go and catch in the theater before the movie you actually went to go see there took place. So you can go back to the 40s and find serials of like Batman and Captain America and Superman that all aired at that time, but these were not films. It was like a series of like 40-minute, 30-minute shorts, basically. And there was also the Fleischer Studios cartoons of Superman. There was the 1960s Batman TV series that we had talked about. There was like a live-action Spider-Man series in the 70s and a live-action Hulk TV series in the 70s, but there wasn't really a movie. The closest you get pre-Richard Donner Superman was a B-movie of a B-movie Superman movie in the 50s, like Superman and the Mole Men, I think is what it's called. And a B-movie, that's like the movie you watch to get out of the way for the main movie you're seeing at the drive-through, at the drive-in. So again, not like a major theatrical release that studios put a lot of money into, believed in, not a conventional film-going experience. It's this movie that invents that. And even then with this movie, despite all its success, it took a while for the genre to get its get up in the air, right? Because like you had these sequels, but these sequels after Superman 2 just were like less and less well received. And so the next comic book, the only other comic prior to Tim Burton's Batman movie, the only other comic book movie that existed besides these Superman movies was Howard the Duck.
Oh,
that's an adaptation of a Marvel comic.
Yeah, and that really killed superhero movies for a little bit too.
Basically, yeah, it took like the success of Tim Burton's Batman movies to get studios to even think about going all in. And even then, we're still 20 years out from like the MCU. Yeah, and so it is kind of funny that you touched on it. It is kind of like the beginning of a new era in filmmaking. Because it's also, the birth of the blockbuster at the same time, right? This is 1978. This is only a year after Star Wars and Close Encounters, and like 3 years after Jaws.
Yeah. Remington, to touch on that, I was very surprised that Donner was selected because of his success of The Omen.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that.
Well, in the 70s was a time when horror was starting to get some mainstream attention, right? Yeah. The Exorcist had several Oscar nominations, unheard of before that. And there was a lot of critical acclaim for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a lot of mainstream critical acclaim for Jaws, right? Jaws was a huge sensation. That was a horror movie. And The Omen was the other big horror movie that you would have heard about at that time that got like mainstream success. It wasn't like a seedy thing that you had to go seek out in some disreputable theater, right? It was like mainstream enjoyed and regarded. So it kind of makes sense that you would take a genre director and tap him to do another genre film that knows how to do that for a mainstream audience.
That's kind of what we do now too. Wasn't Aquaman? Was that James Wan? Or who was that? Yeah. Which is kind of also, it's very similar trajectory.
Richard Donner was involved in the making of.
No.
Tales of the Crypt.
Oh wow!
In the 90s. So, Tales from the Crypt.
Is his roots horror? Is that like what he kind of started that with?
He's done plenty of non-horror projects, but like just to like show like another well-known thing that he did. He was involved in developing Tales from the Crypt as a TV series.
Didn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, who did Eternals? Didn't she do Nomadland?
That was Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao don't let Eternals like color your perception of Chloe Zhao. She is actually a fantastic filmmaker. She made a movie that I still think about all the fucking time because it is so good. It was this movie she made before Nomadland. It's called The Rider.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
Is that the one with the horse?
Yeah. I mean, it's about people that are professional like bull riders.
Never mind. Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
My point is like, yeah, definitely like it's an interesting precedent taking these genre directors and it's like, hey, we're gonna give you a superhero movie.
Yeah, well, that's the studio play.
Yeah. So like, and you know, the director's gonna take it. It's like, oh, cool, budget, you know,
money. Yeah.
And like, and I'm sure like a lot of directors are like, oh, well, I have an attachment to this childhood property. Like, I would love to do my own spin on like, you know, Superman, and like I like Superman. I was a teenage boy at one time. Of course, I like Superman.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, for sure. What was I gonna add? I don't remember what I was gonna add. Yeah. Sorry. Dan, how you talked about everything? Yeah, like it's very. I'm glad you mentioned Howard the Duck because like, yeah, people forget that movie exists and it kind of killed the genre, and then Batman kind of revitalized it. And I mean, I would throw out as like the tentpole movies in the genre as well as Superman 1, Batman, the first one, Spider-Man 2 maybe, or X2, one of those. And then you have Dark Knight, and then maybe like the Avengers making whatever Avengers made $1 billion first as oh, these things can make a lot of money too. And then it's kind of just downhill from there in a way, but you know,
it was it was interesting when I was watching, because I don't think I knew until, again, I was aware of most of the behind the scenes of these movies when I watched it, but I don't think I was aware until after I watched them, the whole thing about how they shot the first two movies back to back, or at least they planned them.
That was the intention, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when the end credits of the first movie rolled, I think it did. I know in the end of the second movie, it said Superman 3 coming soon. I don't know if it said Superman 2 coming soon at the end of the first one, but I remember thinking to myself, oh, wait a minute. So they set up Zod and Brando in the opening of that first movie, but they never factor into the plot. So, they planned this out. So
yeah,
it is kind of like modern it is kind of showing shades of what would be to come of, they were like planning this out, which I hated.
Did you see why they intended to shoot them like back to back?
Why they intended to? No, I don't. Not.
So the producers, the Salkinds, right, Ramin?
Yeah, the Salkinds.
They had done the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers back to back, and they just doing that, they were like, "Oh, this saves a ton of money." So going into Superman, that was the plan as well, because they literally had just done the Musketeer movies, and it was just kind of like, you save money when you don't have to stop and start a production again, which just ended up happening anyway. But
it just
that kind of
it just ends up feeling like the whole thing is even more of a train wreck because the movies are so intertwined. Because just if you're watching them in a vacuum again and you don't know any of this background, so I watched the first movie. You get Marlon fucking Brando, and I didn't know. I always knew for years somehow. I didn't even know that he played Jor-El until recently. I just knew Brando associated with the Donner movies. That's all I knew. And then I see, oh shit, there's Brando. He's Jor-El. And then I go, oh, okay, he's not actually in the first movie. And then, I get it. Zod is going to be the villain of the next one. Whatever. And then in the second movie, in the Lester movie, I'm like, oh, this was the whole fucking thing. They couldn't use Brando, and I'm like, so I'm like experiencing it in in so much hindsight in a vacuum, being like, oh, fuck this, that's stupid. But yeah.
Yeah.
So it taints the first one. Sorry, but it taints the first one even a little bit more to me. Even though, sure, in the Donner cut later, it's like, and I think that was part of my frustration with the Donner cut too. Was, which I get, again, if you're dedicated to it, sure, like it makes sense to put it out. But I go, oh, okay, so you put the Brando stuff that should have properly been in there. That was a glaring issue in the first go around, and those scenes are good. But yeah, like you still end up doing it's like, oh, they don't use the cringy amnesia kiss, which was stupid. Sure, but what is their alternative? Like, oh, wait a minute, he just fucking does the time thing again. Fuck this.
That's what they do in comics, Dan.
I was so fuck this.
Listen, I like it more than the Hypnotic Kiss. That's all I'll say. Like, it's a comic book convention, and I didn't like it in the Flash, so I'm a hypocrite. But I'll say this: I like it more than the Kiss, so I will tolerate it.
Sure.
Remington, did this movie invent like, so like you have, you
did this movie invent cringe?
No, but like you cast Marlon Brando, like a legacy actor, right, to be Jor-El. Like that's what we do now. You had, who played Thor's father, Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins.
You have Kurt Russell appear as Peter Quill's father in Volume 2. Like, did this movie invent that idea? Like, we're gonna cast like a legacy older actor as like the parent figure, I guess.
I don't know if it invented it, but it's certainly a high profile example. Like I said, I mean, like in a superhero context, again, this is like kind of really the first, what we would consider a modern superhero movie. So this is setting the stage for a lot of these things. I'm trying to think of like, legacy casting like that. I don't know.
I have heard.
He does it all the time now. You have Russell Crowe in Love and Thunder. Like, you always have to include some older legacy actor in some role, right?
I did. I did hear that, Gene. That I listened to a commentary track, like a podcast thing and they were just rattling off a bunch of facts, and I did hear that the superhero genre did kind of invent, like, every single side character in these movies is a big actor or someone from, like, oh, it's that guy from that thing. I think they pointed out in Superman 2, the news reporter in the town or something that Zod was at, like the old timey town. The guy that was the news reporter, I guess, was the guy from A New Hope that, like, Vader first chokes.
Oh,
so like just little things like that.
Captain Antilles, or are we talking about like
the guy who goes? What's the line, like, oh, Lord Vader, you and that phony religion, or blah, that guy?
Oh,
yeah.
Tag, I think is his name, right? Remington, you and I are nerds. We know him.
No, it's Modi who he chokes.
I don't remember.
But yeah, no, I did hear, and then it just makes more sense coming down in the years where I guess it just becomes natural of, oh, you can be in a superhero movie, but it's just a one and done. You don't have to commit. So I guess it just makes sense. But I guess, yes, it did in a way kind of revolutionize that idea of casting, like, oh, like the president the guy who plays the president, and not big actors, but like, oh, they're a guy kind of thing. The president in Superman 2 was one of the 12 Angry Men, I believe. So just little things like that. But
cool.
So, yeah, but that fucking score, man, that theme. I didn't Donner also do the Goonies, or am I mistaken?
He did Lethal Weapon.
I thought he did the Goonies.
Yes, he did do the Goonies. I can confirm. I just saw.
Okay, because it's funny. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw the Goonies, which I know people don't really like that movie anymore. I still love the Goonies.
Goonies is great.
Yeah, I love the Goonies. But I remember when I was first getting into movies, and the first time I watched the Goonies, I was like, well, surely this is directed by Spielberg, right? It feels like a Spielberg movie. or like a Stephen King type thing. But nope, it was
no,
this guy.
He wrote it.
Oh, Stephen King did write it?
No, Spielberg wrote it.
Oh, right, there was a Spielberg, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
So, and I think that it's the collaboration, and I think again, I think a big part of maybe my my love for it feels it's because of that John Williams score. I just felt like, oh my god, I feel like I'm watching like the movie magic of Spielberg again for the first time, watching him fly, and that whole sequence and the scene with him and Lois and all that was just so much more satisfying and like awestruck to me than just getting action and here and then it's so funny. I think Gene mentioned in the beginning of the Lester cut, I got so confused because the whole beginning of the Lester cut is a recap of Superman 2 or the first Superman, and I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, did I put on the wrong cut? Is this the Donner cut? Why does this cut?
God, I had the same thought too.
I thought
I went to I was like, am I watching the right movie?
I thought, why does this cut already seem botched? This is the original. But I guess but yes, because of the money, the whole thing was fucked. I got so little out of this Donner thing. I don't know, but.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, now, Dan, since you're saying that you love the John Williams score, this is your point to reckon with the fact that since you've been you've been soiling your pants every time the James Gunn Superman trailer comes on, this is now where you have to realize the fact that the reason why that trailer hits is because they're just ripping off the John Williams score and doing it in electric guitar riff rather than like
That's awesome.
the traditional orchestral John Williams music.
I did. Have we talked about this? How much I love that first teaser trailer?
Like, you don't want to watch the movie. You're just like, I need this trailer to exist to make a vacuum.
It's just you jonesing for the John Williams score, but they're just reusing again.
I think it is.
Gets people in the theater. I don't care. Good, do it.
Yeah, that first teaser trailer had me so good, and I'm sure that's a big part of it. I don't know if but yeah. The more I see from that movie, the more I feel like I'm not gonna like it. But we'll see.
I'm gonna love it, Dan.
I hope so.
One thing I realized was watching this movie, I'm like, oh, Zack Snyder just like ripped off a lot from these two movies.
Yes, I had that same reaction because like obviously, you know, in Superman 2 they don't have a big fight, but literally like Zod appearing in like a western town and causing mayhem, and that's what starts like the conflict of the movie. Whereas like, you know, in Man of Steel they actually have a battle in said western town, right? Yeah.
I'm like, oh wait, this is just like, and you know, I like Man of Steel for what it is, but I was like, did anyone say this when Man of Steel came out? Did anyone point that out? Like,
well, at that time it would have been seen as like homage, right?
And I think that's probably his purpose. But like watching it, I'm like, we got a real Force Awakens thing going on here.
Well, I say Man of Steel is better than Force Awakens.
That's interesting. Like, wait, like as a movie or just like what its intent?
Both, actually, because my argument is that I think Man of Steel has a very clear like direction and a very clear style. Like, we don't have to like Zack Snyder's style, okay? But it's doing something. It's doing something artistically. Whereas Force Awakens is a very safe movie. It doesn't take chances. It's not shooting anywhere left or right. It's just a safe movie because there was no plan. There was no larger vision. It was just Disney saying, we bought Star Wars. We want to capitalize on us buying Star Wars. J.J. Abrams, you're a dependable studio guy. Can you make a Star Wars movie? And J.J. Abrams said, yes, I will make a Star Wars movie. I don't know what a Star Wars is, but I do know that I liked it when I was 8. So I will put the things in that I liked when I was 8. As
like hot Star Trek,
like Snyder had a vision. We don't have to like the vision, but there was a vision nonetheless.
Sure. Yeah, he had it for sure, and you can apply that like notably the Star Wars, the trilogy. They just didn't even have a fucking vision. At least Snyder has like, this is my plan for a 3-movie epic.
Yeah. So that's my argument for why I would say Man of Steel, which is not a perfect movie, is better than Force Awakens. That's what you come here for, folks. Hot movie takes.
No, I mean it makes sense. Like, I get what you're saying too. Like it's a lot of that's important, right? Like Force Awakens is incredibly safe. It's the most studio movie to ever studio.
Like Man of Steel ends with Superman like bringing down a drone and telling the government that he's not going to work for them. Like that's a for 2013 that's a pretty bold political statement. Because that's like on the height of like, Obama's drone war in the Middle East, and when people were like freaking out about like NSA surveillance. That's like a very bold statement for like a studio blockbuster to take. So especially one that's like dependent on like being somewhat in the good graces of the military industrial complex to get all that like machinery and stuff. So that's something. You're not going to get these kind of risks in Disney Wars. You know what I mean? Except for Tony Gilroy.
Yeah, I barely remember Man of Steel. What else did it feel like it was taking from these movies? Because they felt like I kept thinking of the Sam Raimi movies a lot, the Spider-Man movies. But what else did the Man of Steel kind of, do you think? You couldn't
do a Zod story in so many ways, right? So like that right there is just like, when you decide to do a Zod story, it's like, well, yeah, he's got to be trapped in a Phantom Zone by Jor-El, and then right.
I just remember Michael Shannon, yeah.
Like Remington said, like the battle in like the Western town, like that's similar to where where the Zod trio is like established on Earth. The final battle, very much in the Donner cut. It's meant to be like you're kind of destroying the city in a lot of ways.
So Donner, not in the same way that Zack Snyder did, but Donner obviously thinks of Superman as a mythic figure. That's like part of what's being put down in the Donner cut. So whereas it's kind of just like hinted at in the first Superman movie by Donner, it's more explicit in the Snyderverse, where Snyder is kind of setting up Superman to be kind of like a messianic figure, right? Whereas like in the first Superman movie under Donner, like you have some hints of like Moses there, but that's only ever suggested in the same way that it's only ever hinted at in the comics. It's not like a thing it's pondering on, but you can see how Snyder would see those frames and be like, oh yes, I want to make a whole series out of this idea and expand on it.
There was something else too, but like I was thinking about it last night, and I just cannot for the life of me remember. Maybe it'll come to me.
Also, the whole thing with, not only was Gene Hackman not like the Lex Luthor I was always pitched. Hot take, I thought, for what I always understood Lex Luthor to be, for me, I thought Jesse Eisenberg was a better Lex Luthor than this guy. He just, I felt like I was switching from this like very magical and adventurous and just awe-inspiring Spielberg movie to, oh wait, it's like now we're getting to like Joel Schumacher's Batman, which I like those movies, but I just thought, no, don't go to the supervillain lair. I couldn't, and the whole thing where Hackman refused to shave his head, so he had hair for most of the movies. That was just stupid to me.
Listen, Dan.
I'm an Eisenberg defender, so
I'm an Eisenberg defender too. So
that wasn't subtle, right? Like that wasn't subtle. They got Mark Zuckerberg to play Lex Luthor. Like that's how I always.
What's being said? Because you have to adapt. Like he's tech bro-y now, right? Because I also could be a billionaire.
He's an oligarch.
Batman. Like in the 40s, Batman was a millionaire, but now we're in the 21st century. He's got to be a billionaire to like make it make sense. You have to shift your characters to change the times. You kind of see it. I don't know if you guys watched that little clip they did of like a day in the life of Jimmy Olsen. that they released recently?
No.
Did anyone here watch The Righteous Gemstones, or is that just me?
No.
God, you guys are killing me. The guy who's playing Jimmy Olsen, he's in The Righteous Gemstones, and they kind of, he's kind of playing like a, like what an intern would, like a photographer would be nowadays, right? It's putting Peter Parker and Aunt May in an apartment because they're like, dude, there's no way I'm able to afford a fucking house in Queens, New York as a single mother. You have to adapt to the times.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? Dan, I was surprised too. So Remington might know about this. I'm admittedly not as well versed in Silver Age Superman comics, so I don't really know what Lex Luthor was like in a Silver Age comic. I also know him more as the 2000s onward evil billionaire, like financial, was at one point president of the United States kind of character, right? So I was also very surprised by his Gene Hackman portrayal. But you might know more about that.
So, I'm not like the greatest comic book expert, but so my understanding of Lex Luthor in the Silver Age, and even a little bit in the Golden Age, is that he is more cartoonish. He has schemes, and he is like, sorry to say, Dan, he is kind of like, the Legion of Evil. We're going to meet in my secret lair under the swamp,
That comes out of like the water.
Yeah. That's like that era Lex Luthor.
They kind of tap into that in the Harley Quinn show. Then I don't know if you ever watched it.
Yeah,
a little bit. I haven't watched the full
thing. In that
usually
feels a little more like tapping into that. Then
usually I like camp. I don't mind. Like I said, I like the Joel Schumacher movies. But it completely interrupted the movie that I thought was a masterpiece. Even if it was a different villain that was meant to be cartoony, I would still say, get this fucking superhero villain shit out of here. I just want to focus on the relationships. But I know that can't happen. My dream is to have a superhero movie where there is no villain. It's just him or her figuring out their powers. And I used to always think about this, and this is kind of going into, but like my problem with superhero movies these days, or I always just used to think about, in English class, like in high school, I remember learning about like, I don't know, like conflict in writing or whatever. And they would always say conflict could either be man versus man, man versus self, or man versus nature. And it feels like, why can't we can fill an entire movie where it's just someone versus himself figuring out and coming into his own or her own with their powers, and focusing on their relationships and just the awestruck of, oh my God, I have superpowers now. And coming to terms with that, where now it just feels like everyone, it's just, oh, well, we get powers. And so I just felt so frustrated that I feel like I was getting that with the first hour of that first movie. I was like godsmacked with how much I was loving it. But then it just was like, oh, fuck me. Nope. We got to do superhero shit. But yeah.
Well, yeah, and we can dive more into that idea, because that's, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I picked this, because I wanted to talk about the way that the genre stands, because it's almost like, Dan, you weren't going to get that type of movie because we don't have those types of movies today, and it's this movie that sort of kicks these kinds of things off. Like, I'm someone who kind of thinks, like, why do superhero movies all kind of have to be the same? Like, supposedly we live in this era where superhero movies are more elevated, but the idea of elevating them is usually stripping back the comic bookiness of them, like a la Christopher Nolan in the Dark Knight trilogy, to give things like plausible explanations in pursuit of like realism in like photography and in plot. And it's like, it's fine for what it is, but it's not, that's not necessarily changing any of the tropes, right? Like as you're saying, like, still a villain, there's still people in costumes, there's all these things. And then even if you're not going fully in the Nolan direction, you're just doing what the MCU is doing, there's been all these different MCU movies, and they're all just kind of same, right? There's occasionally where you have a little bit of flair in there, like Madness of the Multiverse. That's not a great movie, but you can see in the parts they let Sam Raimi direct, you can see some of his flair and style, right? The Miss Marvel on Disney Plus, that's kind of a weak TV series, but the visual flair in the first couple episodes is like aesthetically off the charts. It's incredible. So you get these like traces, but it's all just very same, like Feige formula, Russo brothers, Joss Whedon formula. So I've always thought, like, what more could we do in this space? And I think part of it has to be that you have to almost not want to make the superhero movie through the big studios, and that's basically never been done, right? They're typically require very large budgets. Even something like, I think the closest would probably be like, I guess I don't know the provenance of how like the Blade movies and like Spawn were made, but like, Howard the Duck was made by Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm was not a big five studio, a lot of money, very successful studio, but quote unquote independent, and even that was something that Lucas was passionate about, but fundamentally he tapped two people, Gloria Katz and William Huck, who we talked about with American Graffiti, who just didn't understand the project. They just wanted a fun little laugh of a time. They didn't get what Lucas saw in the comic, and that's why the movie didn't like come out very well, And so we haven't really had like an outsider take on, at least on these conventional properties, right? Because we do have like those M. Night superhero movies, the Unbreakable trilogy, and we do have something like Scott Pilgrim, which is a superhero movie of sorts.
Is it? Sure. I'll allow it.
It basically is.
I'll allow it. I disagree, but I'll allow it.
I think that's a good. Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, I was trying to think too.
Dan, think of it in the context of WandaVision. A big part of that is just like man versus self, Wanda versus self. But then by the last episode, they still got to get into a CGI fight fest because they just can't help themselves.
Yeah, it's all just, and it's all, well, the problem with a lot of that stuff too is that it's all just building on, and I feel like I sound such a pretentious hater. I like a lot of the MCU stuff. I'm not above any of that stuff, but yeah, I just don't. And what I think I was telling you this, Gene, at one point in time, where I'm also sick of like the subversive superhero movie. Or the subversive superhero. I mean, The Boys is the only thing that gets a pass for me, because I think
What's the subversive superhero movie? What do you think is what example would you say is subversive?
So like the meta, like we're commenting. I think of like or just the way they're marketed. I never got into Invincible because it was like, oh, it's superheroes, but like, no, they get real violent. It's like rated R cartoon. Or there was like the Teen Titans Go movie that was all like meta commentary on superhero. They just had that failed HBO show, not the studio, the franchise, which I saw marketing for, which was like all meta commentary on like the superhero industry. I feel like there's other examples I'm missing. Obviously, The Boys is a big one, but that, making a big political statement. I felt like I had one that I thought was actually a good example. I don't know. It all just, I don't know. It's all just so, I just want like, I don't know what the fuck I want. I don't know. It all sucks. or no, that's what I was thinking of. The one that pissed me off. And it was that, I think we saw it together, Gene. It was that fucking James Gunn produced, Brightburn.
I didn't watch that actually, but I know what you're talking about.
It was the evils. It was Superman, but what if he was evil? That sucked too. Like that's what I mean by like
overdone.
the subversive. Like, oh, but this time here's how we're doing superheroes. I think you mentioned. I think Unbreakable was a pretty good example of like a good version of Bruce Willis reckoning with his, but also that kind of had a villain too and was very. I love Unbreakable, but yeah, I don't know. I just like, I feel like you could make a whole movie or a series of someone just kind of reckoning with getting powers or feeling genuinely like surprised and basking in like, oh my God, this is what it's like to have powers. And how does that affect your life? How does that affect relationships? You don't have to necessarily be like fighting a bad guy.
I need a conflict to resolve, you know? I'm not saying that it has to be a bad guy, but
the conflict can be relationships. It can be within yourself. It can be, or it could be at the end. You know what? Don't have a big CGI battle. Like save, just like in the Superman movie, save someone from a burning building or something. That could be cinematic and low scale.
You want Hancock starring Will Smith?
I want Hancock starring Will Smith. 2.
All right, but what if I like Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy?
Yeah,
I haven't seen that in so long. I remember liking that.
I kind of going back.
I guess that. Sorry, but I guess all that to say is I know I just ranted about what I want. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I guess all that to say is, I guess when you mentioned where else is there to go with this genre, I think that would be something I would like to see. But again, it's not like
a man versus self story.
Yeah. Or
pitch
like
it, Dan. Write a spec script. Pitch it.
And just very low scale, like, you know. But
how do you do a low scale superhero movie?
You know, that's like, Iron Man.
That's like the big.
But it wasn't.
That's like the big question, because like when you pitch superhero movie, you know that the reason that costs money is you have to find a way to make powers look good on screen, right?
Well, I mean, how do they get around the Netflix thing so much is that their power is they just have super strength.
Your prescription, your subscription goes up in price every year. That's how.
or you know, I mean,
fraud.
No, you're right. You're right.
Showing.
That was also, sorry, I feel like I'm just complaining, but that's also a big complaint I have in a lot of newer superhero stuff too, is no one has like real fun powers anymore. Everyone just has what?
I mean, it's all been done, right? Unless you like okay, so there's this is where I will argue you're really not going to get it in a a visual medium like One Piece. You know, even the anime, sure, but like there's a ton of fun powers in One Piece, but it's on a page, right? You can do a lot more with that. Notably, Saga, Brian K. Vaughan's Saga has a lot going for it, and one of the things is because it's a comic book, right? And Vaughn has even said like he doesn't want it to be adapted, so he kind of goes like really big with it because his whole thing is like, I'm gonna make it so it would be just so expensive to adapt that no one's gonna want to adapt it, you know, because you're not limited on a comic book page, right? So you're able to do a lot more and just have a lot of more fun powers, which I think you see in One Piece, which is why I think the Netflix series is gonna get to a point where it's just gonna fucking crash and burn, you know. And sure, you can adapt the anime, but you know that has its own other issues. But I mean, I think you're just limited in a way by the visual medium. People still think that a Mr. Fantastic stretching power is kind of hard to animate and look good, you know, and that's not like a crazy power, but how do you make it look good, right?
You know, it's funny. Now that I think of it, the one superpower I've always thought to myself that always felt like such a gimme and was something we really haven't done before was, or I just always thought was really cool, and like, if I was a 5-year-old, what would it be a superpower I would think of? Was Beast Boy. And obviously, to Remington's point, that you can't do that. And I remember I watched the live action Teen Titans. I think it was like a WB show or something. Yeah. And I was so excited, like, oh, live action Beast Boy, like, power to turn into any animal. That's like, how have we not done that yet? And of course, it's like, because the CGI models to do like a million different animals. Fuck me. Do a dark story where like there's a kid living in Africa and he in like a tribe and he gets the power turned and he needs to defend his tribe from like wild tigers by becoming a tiger and like living with the tigers, and he like becomes one. It's like a Dances with Wolves. Like you could do something like that. I don't know. Like, be
Sounds
creative.
like suspiciously like Kraven the Hunter.
It's stupid. I hate that. I hate this. Burn this genre to the ground. Never make another one. Someone
Never make another.
What do you?
All right, folks.
Yeah,
folks. We want. Let's point of order, since I would like to move on to things. Let's give a couple more things. Let's talk about maybe a scene that we each liked or disliked from the film, and then we can move into final thoughts on the film. And then I don't know if you want to say your pick, Gene, since I know your schedule got a little more complicated.
No, I do. I still want to do my pick. I can definitely do. I can probably do one episode.
So let's do that. Let's each name a scene that you want to talk about in the film, and then we'll move into final thoughts, and then we'll do Gene's pick.
Sure.
All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Dan just ranted about how he hates superhero movies. Man, okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Not really a scene, just I really enjoyed Christopher Reeve. Just every time he was on screen, I just loved every second of it. I love his Clark Kent. His like, gee, Miss Lane, like he's just such a it's so wholesome, you know. I just want to like hug him, and I love how like physically, you know, he slouches, you know, like he's meek, he's clumsy. And the way he speaks, and the minute he's Superman, his voice is deeper. He's more confident. Like he's such a good like physical actor in these movies, and I loved everything about that. So really, just for me, like I just love the Daily Planet scenes. Just, every time that he's Clark Kent, I just had so much fun with it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I wanted to fuck him both as Clark and Superman. I thought, damn, this man's good.
Yeah, it's cool with Christopher Reeve because his central contribution to the character is finding a way to credibly bridge Clark Kent and Superman, the Superman identities. That was seen as like a really big deal with his performance and how he plays that and the arc the character undergoes between the first and second films. He has a background in theater. He has like a really, I think his dad was either like a writer or a playwright, and so he comes from like this very serious world of like acting and writing. I think he went to Juilliard, and he was doing theater, and then suddenly he got cast in Superman, and everyone was like in the theater world that he knew was like very divided. Some people were like, "Oh, you got it made, man! You got the ticket," and other people were like, "You're a traitor. That's not real acting. You're a sellout, traitor."
Wait, was that his first role? Was he in movies before this?
His first movie role, I'm pretty sure.
No way. That's actually so cool.
Yeah. So, you know, very, very big deal. And it was his most like notable role ever since. He never really.
He wasn't like a TV guy like Hamill.
Because
Mark Hamill will be like more like a TV actor before he booked Luke Skywalker. That's so interesting. I did not know that. I think because he's good, so I thought like he probably had done a movie or two or something before.
Okay, so he had like a minor role in one movie before this, by the looks of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mostly did like theater before getting cast, basically.
Yeah. Well, good for him.
I really like the waterfall scene.
No, you don't, Dan. No, I'm kidding. Which cut?
No,
which
I
cut?
do.
Which cut?
Second one, I guess, better, but yeah, because it's part of their relationship.
You like how he laser beams the log and he's like, Miss Lane, get the log. And like, so like you're just banking on like the log.
In the Donner cut.
Like, fuck me, I forget which one's in Lois.
Let me clarify. Him saving Lois isn't in the Donner cut, which is part of
him saving the kid is in the
Donner cut.
That sequel. I like because it was more focused on the love triangle between the three
character.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. But what about you, Remington?
Yeah. I really loved. So a scene that I loved is I love the Donner cuts inclusion of this of Clark regaining his powers through like the AI ghost of Jor-El. I just love how like terrifying that scene is and how well acted the ghost of Marlon Brando does that scene. It's just like a very striking image, whereas the Lester cut doesn't show that. It just sort of like hints at it and then cuts away, basically. And so it was really cool for me to see that play out. In terms of a scene I didn't like in the Donner cut, I personally felt so in the Lester cut, I didn't love everything that happened in that diner. I didn't like that scene, and then to learn that it's actually a central part of Donner's vision for the second film, I was like, oh no. So that was a thing that I don't like. I thought it was kind of like hackneyed and stereotypical, and so that does not, it doesn't jive with me that he went back. I don't like what that says about Superman and humanity, even though it fits in with Donner's idea of like there is no separation between Clark and Superman. They are the one person, and the one person would do this. And you can't have that realization, that coming together without the powers. That's the same. It's the whole package. It's the whole person. But to me, that just kind of says that in Superman's stewardship of Earth, he will not modulate. It's actually more important for him to, or not modulate or check his ego. It's actually just more important for him to get even, with someone who doesn't have his power or his strength. It's just a stupid Earthling, So I despise the diner bits personally in both cuts.
Oh, they kind of homage that in Man of Steel when he puts that guy's truck like through the freaking phone. You know what I'm talking about, Remington?
Oh, did they? I don't remember. I haven't
remember
Man of Steel in a couple years.
Yeah, he also gets this like a fight with like at a gas station or like some kind of like it was some like trucker, and like the to get back, he doesn't do anything as Clark Kent obviously, and then like later on when the trucker leaves the building, he sees like his semi truck has been put through like a fucking like a power line.
Oh wow.
That's what I was so watching. I was like, holy shit! Does Zack Snyder just rip on that too?
I guess, yeah.
I'll find it on YouTube and send it to you. But like,
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that like that seems like a very like it's like a choice that you're doing as like this is homage to Superman 2, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So final thoughts.
I like that overall. It's a fun like movie. Like a fun superhero history, Superman history, behind the scenes movie thing, like it's a very interesting story and how it all happened. I think I appreciate that a lot.
What's your Letterboxd score on it? Or what would you give it if you were to put it on Letterboxd?
Probably like a 3. I don't hate it. I don't like love it, but I like it.
What about the Lester cut?
Probably 2.5. The campiness was too much for me.
All right. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm happy I finally watched them. I know they're like a big part of movie and blockbuster culture, and I definitely felt that in again, that first hour of the first movie. But yeah, no, I mean, ultimately, unfortunately, just the second movie completely fell off a cliff and was following what I just didn't like about the first movie. And then the Donner cut just kind of put in the things that should have been there to begin with and did what they could, but still ultimately was I just was good for the fans, good for Donner, good for Reeve. I love Reeve. I love him as Superman. Thought he was fantastic. But yeah, ultimately just it's good for the fans, not for me. But yeah, no, it's interesting.
Your scores?
I gave the first one a 7 out of 10. I gave the second one like a 3 out of 10. And I think, or I maybe gave it a 2 out of 10. And I think I gave like the Donner cut like a 5 out of 10. So,
okay, cool.
What about you?
So kind of like I said before, I was not too high on the Lester cut. I felt that I just didn't really like a lot of the jokes. They just didn't really land for me. It's not what I would have wanted from a follow-up to a fairly like triumphant movie like the first film. And I felt like it subtracted more from its more interesting components, like, Zod and his cronies. The woman's name Ursa, and Non is the other guy. So detracted more than added. So I let me check my Letterboxd real quick. What did I give those? I feel like I gave the Lester cut a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, if I'm not mistaken.
2 stars.
Yes, I gave that a 2 on Letterboxd versus the Donner Cut, which, like I said before, I felt was a very interesting, like, intellectual and artistic exercise, fun little piece of movie history to go back and compare to see that, like, studios, the fuckery they're doing today, they were doing 40 years ago, and it always just takes some, like, passionate nerds to, like, bully them into doing the things they should do. And I believe I gave the Donner Cut a 3.5 out of 5 because I appreciated what it was going for, even if I didn't think that it was always the best executed, and we had to be a little more forgiving and understanding than maybe we would want for a film. So that's kind of my feelings on it. I hope this is a good exercise. We should definitely think about doing director's cuts in the future if there are any director's cuts that people have their eye on. I saw the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut. That was an interesting experience. My hot take is that I think the Lord of the Rings extended editions are actually worse than theatrical editions.
I agree in a way, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the pacing in those at all, which is why they are called extended editions. Fun fact, Peter Jackson does not endorse the extended editions. He prefers the theatrical. He doesn't care if you watch the extendeds. He thinks it's fine. Like, he makes money off of their sale, when people, like, buy the DVDs and stuff. But his preferred version is the theatrical. So if we ever want to do more episodes like that,
So sad.
Discussion. But take it away, Gene, real quick.
I'm gonna have us watch the Alien 3 assembly cut, Remington, just because of you.
No. What's your real pick?
No, just because you mentioned doing the director's cut, which is funny because Fincher was not even involved with the assembly cut either, because he just owned the movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, either way, yeah. I mean, this is a good lead up to what we're gonna see with James Gunn's Superman. So no, I like the lead up. So this is a good pretext for it. But yeah,
yeah.
So
yeah.
Gene, give us your pitch.
So my movie also has 2 cuts, but I'm going to have us watch the theatrical cut, very notably, and I'll explain why. Are you guys familiar with Walton Goggins?
Yes.
And he's having kind of a renaissance lately, I would say. Maybe not even a renaissance. Like, he's been a working actor for 30 years now, I would say. And he's found a lot of success later in his life and his career. Notably, he just starred in The White Lotus, right? Very acclaimed hit show, very popular. Like, it's a very good water cooler show. From what I haven't watched it, but I've seen people talk about it. He is in Fallout, a show very near and dear to my heart. Notably very well as the Ghoul. I really first came to know... Huh?
He's Cecil in Invincible.
Yes, he's Cecil in Invincible. Well, I first really got to know Goggins in The Righteous Gemstones, which, again, you guys haven't watched. I highly recommend it. That is a Danny McBride show, and Goggins kind of ended up in the Danny McBride sphere. Danny McBride has a writing partner named Jody, and basically once you're in that gang, very similar to Wes Anderson, and Kevin Smith, right? Once you have like your crew, once you work with them, you're in, right? That's how Goggins ended up in Righteous Gemstones. Before that, he was in Vice Principal because, has anyone watched Eastbound and Down, another Danny McBride show?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
So in the 3rd season, Jason Sudeikis plays like a friend to Danny McBride's character. It's set in like Miami, and apparently Goggins auditioned for that role, and they decided that it just really wasn't that he was bad, it was just kind of not the role for him, right? But McBride was very taken with Goggins and, kind of kept him in the back pocket. And when it came time to do Vice Principals, he reached out to Goggins and said, hey, I made this show, I think you'd be perfect for the role. And the show Vice Principals, if you guys don't know, it's Goggins and McBride like as the co-stars. And because of that, when McBride developed The Righteous Gemstones, again, he hit up Goggins, who at that point had been a pretty close collaborator and friend, and said, hey, I have this role for you. Baby Billy Freeman, who is like Goggins' most famous role. Before that, you guys may know, Goggins spent years on Justified and would make appearances in film, right? Predators, he plays that like kind of rapey convict, right? If you look at his filmography, he just has all these like small roles. Well, you'll notice there's 2 movies on there from a very notable director. I don't know if you guys can guess where I'm going with this.
I knew. Yep.
No, I'm lost. I'm in the dark.
Remington, and so he appeared in The Bourne Identity, small role. Just The Architect, Randy and the Mob, Winged Creatures, That Evening Sun, Predators, Cowboys and Alien, Straw Dogs, Lincoln. Then in 2012, he appeared in Django Unchained by Quentin Tarantino. Not a big role, but enough for him to kind of befriend Tarantino. And from Goggins did Variety or GQ when they talk about their career. He talked about how that was kind of enough for him. Like, I worked with Tarantino, that's all I need in life, right? Well, Tarantino made another movie after that, The Hateful Eight. And basically a friend of Goggins said, hey, you should go and read for this. At the time, The Hateful Eight was only, to my understanding, it was kind of like meant to be like a stage production, and they weren't really sure they were going to make it happen. But Goggins went and read for it, and he read for the stage production kind of version. There's like a version that they did it once, to my understanding, and Goggins read for it, felt, okay, that was enough for me. This probably won't ever happen. But then Tarantino thought, you know what? What if I actually made this movie? Hey, Goggins, you want to be in this movie? And Goggins like, sure. And Tarantino being Tarantino brought in Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jason Lee, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Bruce Dern. Well, I've never seen The Hateful Eight. It's interestingly a blank in my Tarantino filmography. I don't know if you guys have.
I've not. It's been on the list.
Wait, neither of you have seen The Hateful Eight?
No.
Have you seen it, Dan?
I'm a Tarantino stan. Of course I've seen The Hateful Eight. I didn't know you haven't seen it.
And I want to hear you talk about it, but I've never seen it, Remington.
Holy fuck.
And that's how I tie in Walton Goggins, because it's kind of one of his more like, kind of after like a very mid-career, I would say. It was kind of one of the larger roles he booked, and he's kind of been on an upward trajectory since then, right? And now we're at a point where it's like, well, he's in Fallout, he's in The White Lotus, he's in Righteous Gemstones.
Also, Hateful Eight's going to have its 10th anniversary, I believe, soon.
So, Hateful Eight notably has a theatrical cut and an extended Netflix cut that's kind of split into miniseries. We don't have to watch that. I want to watch the theatrical cut. If you choose to watch the extended version, that's on you. I may do it myself. I'll see if I have time. But yes, I would like to watch the theatrical cut of The Hateful Eight, because I've never watched it. And it's an interesting movie. It's kind of like a bottle episode in a way, because the whole movie's set basically in like one location, to my understanding, mostly.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
And I feel like people talk about it, but I feel like it's overshadowed by Django and is it Hollywood that he did right after Hateful Eight, Dan?
Yeah,
I feel like it exists in the middle of these 2 very well acclaimed movies. And although that movie, the critical reception wasn't as great as I thought it was, I've seen people talk about it really well. So I'm very interested in this movie and everything around it. So we'll be watching The Hateful Eight by Tarantino.
Hell yeah.
As a asterisk, I had some reservations because of Israel in the news, and Tarantino notably lives in Israel with his wife, but he has seen, to my understanding, he stays away from the political commentary, and I'm like, you know what, whatever. Tarantino has a lot of going on anyway. We'll watch his movie. So, yes.
Just folks, don't feel like you have to pay for it. That's if you're watching along with us. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. The Weinstein Company did produce it, obviously, but Remington, you got a movie to go watch.
Yes. No, I'm looking forward to this, Gene. This is a great pick. I wanted to see more Tarantino films. I've only seen Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, and Django Unchained. And I liked all those. I like Kill Bill Volume 1 more than Kill Bill Volume 2.
Volume 1 is so freaking good. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm down for Hateful Eight. It's long been on the list. So looking forward to it.
All right.
Yes. Remington's got to go watch 28 Years Later, so bye.
Yes, he does.
All right, I'll end it. Bye.